learning and perception in whole units, not by analyzing experiences into parts. I'd also like to highlight Freud. Freud is like one of my favorites. He's an interesting character. Freud was an Austrian doctor that was very radical in his ideas. When he came on the scene, he was totally different than some of his ideas had not been presented before. He believed that mental life was like an iceberg with only a small part exposed to view. He came up with the psychoanalytic perspective. Sigmund Freud believed that behavior is largely influenced by unconscious wishes, thoughts, and desires, especially sex and aggression. He's well known for that coined term, penis envy, and he's also the guy that might accuse you of being in love with your mother if you have some certain crisis in your life. Repression occurs when threatening thoughts are unconsciously held out of awareness, according to Freud. Freud created psychoanalysis. He was the first to have psychotherapy, to use psychotherapy to explore unconscious conflicts and emotional problems. Some of Freud's students eventually broke away to promote their own New Freudian theories. Some of the key names of some of these individuals were Alfred Adler, Anna Freud, Karen Horney, Carl Jung, he's pretty famous, Otto Rank, and Erik Erikson. So moving right along, we also have humanism. And the goal in humanism, the goal of psychology is to study unique aspects of the person. We focus on the human experience, potentials, ideals, and problems. Each person has innate goodness, meaning that we're always good somewhere inside, and we're able to use free will, in contrast with the determinism of Skinner and Freud. Key names in this area of thought is Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. You may have heard of Maslow if you've ever studied Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Other key points in humanism: self-image, your perception of your own body, personality, and capabilities. Self-evaluation, positive and negative feelings you have about yourself. Then there's the frame of reference, which is a mental perspective used for interpreting events. Self-actualization, that's another Maslow area, and that's fully developing one's potential and becoming the best person possible. And then there is diversity in early psychology. What kind of people were being psychologists? What type of psychologists? Where they come from? What were their backgrounds? We find that most early psychologists were indeed Caucasian men, but there were women and ethnic minority pioneers. Margaret Washburn, she was the first woman awarded a PhD in psychology in 1894, and then there was Francis Cecil Sumner. He was the first African-American man awarded a PhD in psychology in 1920. Inez Beverly Prosser, she was the first African-American woman awarded a PhD in psychology in 1933. Today in psychology, there are three broad views: biopsychological, psychological, and sociocultural. Offer complementary perspectives on behavior. Most psychologists are eclectic, and you will probably find that you're eclectic too after learning about all of these various schools of thoughts. And what that means is that they draw insights from a variety of perspectives, since a single perspective is unlikely to explain all human behavior. Once I was asked to write a paper on which school of thought I thought was more applicable to human behavior, and I found myself to also be eclectic. I just could not decide which area summed up the sum of psychology and behavior and cognition and thinking. The biopsychological view. In this view, behavior is shaped by internal physical, chemical, and biological processes. Neuroscience, interdisciplinary field formed by biopsychologists, biologists, and other scientists who share the perspective of biopsychology. There is also we're moving on through these various views. There's the evolutionary view, where behavior is shaped by the process of evolution. And then we have the behavioral view, where behavior is shaped by one's environment. The cognitive view, behavior shaped by mental processing of information. The psychodynamic view, Behavior is shaped by unconscious processes. There will be a pop quiz over all these views at the end of the lecture. I'm just kidding. Humanistic view. Behavior is shaped by self-image, a subjective perception and needs for personal growth. Socio-cultural view. Behavior is shaped by one's social and cultural context. And this is because of cultural relativity. Behavior must be judged relative to the values and social norms of the culture in which it occurs. And there are social norms. And I'm sure you've heard that term, social norms. Those are rules that define acceptable and expected behavior for members of various groups. Some of the social norms that exist here in the United States may not be the same in Russia or Africa or some other parts of the world. So psychologists need to be aware of the impact of cultural diversity and how that may affect behaviors. Psychologists, when we look at their educational background, psychologists usually have a master's or doctorate degree. They're trained in methods, knowledge, and theories of psychology. The clinical psychologists treat more severe psychological problems or do research on mental disorders. Then you have your counseling psychologists that they treat milder problems such as school or work troubles, and not all psychologists perform therapy. Research. Psychologists might research development, which is the course of human growth and development, learning, how and why it occurs in humans and animals, personality, traits, motivations, and individual differences. Then we have sensation and perception, how we come to know the world through our five senses. Comparative, study and compare behavior of different species, especially animals. Cognitive, primarily interested in thinking. We keep hearing cognitive. Anytime you hear that, we're talking about thinking. Biopsychology, how behavior is related to biological processes, especially activities in the nervous system. Gender, study differences between males and females and how they develop. Social, human and social behavior. Let's talk about what psychologists. Cultural and evolutionary, how our behavior is guided by patterns that evolved during our history. Psychologists also study the behavior of all organisms. There's the animal model, when an animal's behavior is used to derive principles that may apply to human behavior. Animal research can also benefit animals directly, so it's not just to see if animals can help us. We are actually some psychologists are actually doing the research to try to benefit the animals. The psychiatrist is a medical doctor who treats mental disorders with psychotherapy and or medications. The psychoanalyst receives additional training in psychoanalysis in a post-PhD or medical doctor program. And then there's the counselor, usually the person with a master's degree who helps solve problems with marriage, school, and so on. And that's the area that I studied in prior to becoming a principal. And then you have the psychiatric social worker. This is the person with a master's of social work who applies social science principles to help people in clinics and hospitals.
Experiments. Experiments are conducted to identify cause and effect relationships. We conduct experiments to directly vary a condition you might think affects behavior, to create two or more groups of subjects alike in all ways except the condition you are varying. Experiments are conducted to record whether